With shipbuilding being used heavily now in many areas of Maine, I'm going to give a brief history of one of the major shipbuilding companies in Maine, Bath Iron Works. With BIW paying around $74,661 yearly and an hourly of $36, it is home to many jobs in Maine, and it is hard to find someone who isn't working there in your family. So let me take you to the beginning of when shipbuilding became popular in Maine. It all started in 1607 when some Englishmen settled there for a winter and built the first ever ocean-capable vessel made in the colonies, named Virginia, after the Virgin Queen Elizabeth. After a couple of years, more ships were being made near Popham Beach due to colonial wars and the Native Americans. Shipbuilding in Bath became more popularized in the 1740s and on, but primarily sloops, schooners, and brigs used by local entrepreneurs to carry regionally produced products such as lumber, bricks, hay, and salted and fresh produce. Then they would return the items not produced in Maine, such as molasses, rum, sugar, and dyes from the West Indies, and the British or colonial manufactured goods from the South. There were many pirates, embargo wars, and depressions, but in the 1840s, Bath was in the ascendancy with several locally built and owned and managed square-rigged fleets developing large products to Bath. Profits, such as those from the Pattons, McLeans, Seawalls, Crookers, and Hootons. With the discovery of gold in California, Bath decided to hop on the trend and build high-speed boats and passenger boats for prospectors. It was short-lived, but they reached the peak in number of shipyards building vessels as whooping 22 in all. Then, in the 1860s, many ships were captured or sold foreign during the Civil War when Confederate steam-powered raiders threatened northern shipping, so Bath was greatly reducing the number of shipyards and ships being built. But on a higher note, after the wars, Maine was building more than half of the total ocean-going wooden sailing vessels, and solely in Bath was half of those ships. Around this time, the first ever four-mast schooner was built in Bath in 1880, alongside the largest five-mast schooner ever built in 1890, but sadly skipping a few years, in around 1920, the wooden shipbuilding industry plummeted because steel ships were starting to be made. And thanks to Thomas W. Hyde, Bath Iron Works was officially created and it had many different shipyards to work for him. As being a former machinery specialist, he was highly praised by the people around him. Thus, he had him start building steel naval vessels, passenger ships, and even yachts. And after World War I, Bath Iron Works stood as the only major shipping building company in Bath, but it too faltered and almost died out in the late 1920s, but then was bought out and revived by William S. Newall, and even earned a reputation of building the best steel vessels for the next 80 years. With World War II around the corner, Bath Iron Works had remarkable speed when building ships during World War II, with BIW launching a destroyer every 17 days, making more destroyers than the entire output of all Japanese shipyards. Since World War II, Bath Iron Works continues to build ships primarily for the U.S. government, who contracts them to build ships, raking in the big bucks for the best ships. And now here are some of the tools used by colonial people when building wooden ships, and some of these are still being used when building wooden ships, but primarily for steel ships there are many other tools. So in number 1 and 2, you can see it's a caulking mallet and caulking iron, respectively. These are used for driving oakum into the seams of the hull after the hull has been planked. Number 3 is a broadaxe, which is used to make square timbers for wooden shipbuilding. Number 4 is a serving mallet and reel, which was used to put rope around it to tie it better. Number 5 is a small serving mallet. It's used by a sailmaker. Number 6 is an auger for boring holes in wood. Number 7 is a wooden block plane used to groove and cut wood. Number 8 is a wooden mold plane used to make intricate shapes from the wood. Number 9 is a wooden mallet. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Number 10 is an adze, a tool similar to an axe with an arched blade at the right angles of the handle. Number 11 is a fid, a wooden taper for forcing the strands of rope apart when splicing. Number 12 is a sailor's palm, used by sailmakers when forcing needles through heavy canvases. It's really just an adaptation of the thimble. Number 13 are a large set of dividers used for measuring off distances. Number 14 is a heart, used for rigging for staying up stays. Number 15 is a wooden rigging block. It's the grooves in the sides for a rope stop, as you can see. Number 16 is a bevel. It's used for setting off angles. And here is a tree nail. Now, a tree nail is a very dry wooden peg used to join timbers, especially in building wooden ships. It swells from moisture and ensures a tight joint. Now, ships and the manufacturing of ships account for roughly 3% of all CO2 emissions, emitting roughly about 1 billion tons every year. That's pretty crazy and not good for our environment, as you can tell. But for the future, of ships and shipbuilding, I do believe it's going to go into a decrease because ships aren't being used as what they were in the past. We now have many more ways of transportation and everything else, and so I don't believe that shipbuilding would be very primarily focused into the future, but it would be for wars because it is a very strategic advantage to have a naval combat. Now, with many other types of wars coming out, with like biological war, nukes, and all these other things, it may not go against go good against those. I can't speak, sorry, but still, they are a powerful asset used for the U.S. Navy.